Hey, what's going on? I'm Bradley Denniston, and this is Radium Records here in Hollywood, California. It's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm here in the studio recording this for you. So hopefully you really like this. I'm going to do a little behind-the-scenes look into Stolen Love, a track I produced, wrote, mixed, mastered, all that good stuff, and I'm very familiar with, I guess you could say. I'm going to dig in today. I'm going to show you guys some drums. I'm going to show you the drum processing, the stems, how the drums were recorded, how they were stacked up and compressed, and what plugins I used and all that fun stuff. So join me. Let's go. All right, so first of all, I just want to show you the session itself. I did it all in Logic Pro. I don't like to switch DAWs when I'm producing myself, just because there's too many brains being used, and I'm already using a lot of brains, parts of the brain, if you will, just when I'm like writing and producing and also trying to organize the session and mixing as I go and all that stuff. So I didn't want to add more layers of, hey, you got to use this side of your brain and, you know, bounce these stems and make sure everything's good and get it into Pro Tools, which I do prefer mixing and mastering and audio editing stuff in Pro Tools. But if I'm going to start something that I'm going to record, produce, all that stuff, I'll do it in Logic Pro and I'll do it all the way through. There's no need for me to be jumping to a different software. The track itself turned out to be about 108 tracks. You could see some of these are actually like buses and stuff here in the view window, so it's probably more like 105 or so. Not too many tracks, not terribly thick or anything like that, but every track is very important. So I wanted to get into the drums. That's the first thing I wanted to break down with you guys, and the only thing in this video, this module here. So let's talk about the drums. You can see, first of all, like, I'm not very organized when it comes to my sessions, especially when I'm writing and I'm producing, and I'm like really just trying to like hone in on sounds and get things together and go fast and create fast and not lose feel and not lose the intention of the song. Because a lot of the times I think you can get into a technical aspect where you're coloring everything and you're labeling everything, and you know, instead of just like knowing the song intimately and like being involved in it and feeling like it's a moving, breathing piece of life. So I try really hard not to like come in here and like dissect and color and all that. I also feel like that's a waste of time. If I'm going to sit down and make music or I'm going to work on something, I just play it and I go, oh my gosh, I got this idea. Or dude, that kick drum needs to smack harder, you know, etc. I don't really want to be like, oh, you know, I don't have any ideas, so I'm going to color code tracks. So that's one thing I'm just not very good at, is the organization. So if you are organized and you want to be an assistant here at Radium, I'd love to get a resume. But yeah, here we are. Here's the drums. I'm going to get into them. We have some live drum stems that I got from a drummer here in LA. His name's Reese Hastings. He's someone I've worked with before in the studio, recorded, engineered, and now I wanted him to jump on this track, and he did it remotely because of the whole COVID thing. And that's when I was producing and writing this whole thing. So he was kind enough, and of course, you know, I gave him a little fee as well, and gave him some writing credit, you know, to put some drums down, like acoustic drums that I thought really brought this thing to life, as well as all the other, you know, the players and the musicians that got on this. So I'm really grateful for that, and I'll show you kind of his stems and what he sent me. Here we go. So here are the drums. Here's the room from him and the overheads from him, and I think that's pretty much all I used. And then I also, the live kick as well. So kick, the room, and overheads. And it's really funny because sometimes when you solo out stems, you're like, God, that's what I ended up with? It doesn't sound very good. But altogether, it sounds really good. So I'll show you the stacks. And that's another thing about mixing and producing, is sometimes when you solo things out, you're like, that doesn't sound good. In the mix of things and in the whole kit, in the whole song, it works out really well. And you go, wow, that's really dope. So I'll play the kick drum that I kind of popped in, and the snare drum. And this was really so that I could get a more modern feel out of the record. I wanted to have more sampled drums, but also like the thing that a live drummer can really do is they can play hi-hats and hi-hat patterns so much more human, and also just those little fluctuations in velocity and timbre when they're hitting that snare drum. It helps so much. It brings things to life, but it's mainly in the articulation on the hi-hat, I think, that brings that human feel and that human swing to the drums. And that's not something I like to correct, you know, so just find a great drummer. So here's the same drum stems with the kick I added, which is a sample. Like a tape kick, and then a snare, punchy snare kind of vibe, right? So let's hear those all together. Missing a very, very important element here is the kick sample as well. So this kick sample was also layered in, and this is where like basically all the punch comes from in the low end. So here we go. Little tom fill here coming in. What I did with this tom fill is Reese had played these tom fills throughout the track, and I basically like took the tom fills that he had, and then I also layered them with I think it was Contact. Like I just used like Contact 60s or 70s drummer and layered the toms so that they came through a little bit better in the record. So that's something I like to do a lot. You can also use things like Trigger and Drumagog and all that drum replacement software. But let you hear this as well. This is the tom fill coming in with Crash and the full drum kit. There's also, if you hear like a little pickup note on the kick drum as well that I thought kind of just added this like nice vinyl-y record kind of feel to it. I wanted this record to feel timeless, and I feel like I got pretty close to it, you know, just doing everything in the box, but getting the right players on it and all that. So let's get into some of the plugins and some of the things that I did to make these drums kind of punch and have all this fatness and everything, and the roundness, and also trying to make them sound like they got printed to tape. And then, you know, but are still modern. That was kind of the idea behind it. So first of all, I'll play all the drums in the mix so you can hear kind of everything together, because I think that's important to understand context, or else like, what are we talking about here? So here's everything with the tom fill coming in and the drums in the mix.
My heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty, baby, where have you been?
All right, so you can kind of see their kind of disco-y, tape saturated kind of vibe, and yeah, just punchy, got the low end, but still kind of sound modern. That was kind of what I was going for. So these are stems from Reese. When I got them, he gave me stems of the full takes and the rooms and the overheads and all that, and kick and snare and all that. And I just kind of like pick and choose like what I wanted to use out of it. And like I said at the beginning, the hi-hats were really like, you know, like the groove, the human feel that I really liked out of the live drums. So I kind of like focused on that and getting some depth out of the room mics. And that was about it. And there you go. I had already programmed the drums before I sent them to him. I am a drummer. You know, I kind of grew up, like, first thing I ever played was drums, like, realistically. I got a guitar first, but drums were the first ones that I was like, yeah, I love drums. This is sick. You know, you could just bang on stuff. So yeah, let's talk about some plugins, because, you know, I know everybody loves to hear about what plugins did you use, you know? First of all, like, I don't typically use plugins on the samples. If I find a right sample, I just like pop it in the mix, and sometimes I'll, you know, put plugins on it and then I'll print it. You know, I'll be like, yo, that kick sounds good, I'm gonna print it. So let's see if I did that. No, I just bounced the MIDI, you know, bounced the MIDI down on this one to audio. And this is just this kick, and then there's snare here. On the snare drum, I really wanted it to be like, you know, kind of just that short gated, you know, supersonic kind of snare drum. Just disco, baby. So the Wolf compressor made its way on here, which I love this compressor, and I think it's so musical, and you can overdo it like crazy. But I'll play the snare with and without this guy. You can kind of see like how much color and tone and saturation that this is actually adding. So yeah, that's about it with the Wolf compressor, and here is the snare soloed out for you as well, so that you can really kind of get a handle on what this guy's doing. Like this snare really just to me wanted to be really punchy, you know, fat, like that was my filler, you know. Because I had the drum mics in the room and the overheads where I had kind of Reese's snare drum in there. So these together sound like this. So that's it, kind of like just like one of those disco beats, you know what I mean? And also, the snare, I wanted to get some of the top end out. I wanted the hi-hats to take that, the vocals to take that. So this lo-fi knob always kind of rolls out some of the top. And then we have a Pro Q3 that found its way on here. Just pushing a little bit of the mids. I do that a lot. I think like that's kind of an API sound to me. Or, I mean, there's other, like even Neve sometimes will push the mids forward a little bit. But definitely an API kind of feel for me is like just push the 1K area up. And then I took out the 4K a little bit, again, making room for the hi-hats, and then sweeped out like all the garbage that you don't really need in a snare drum down in 95 or something, right? And then, yeah, then we got this, looks like we have a send here as well, which is going to another, it's called kick parallel comp, but really it's like drum parallel comp. And I usually use a parallel compressor for the kick and the snare, but I don't like to send like hi-hats and cymbals there because they can get really washy in the parallel stuff. So there, the Wolf found its way there as well. You can see there's no lo-fi on there, just full, you know, top end and everything, but 100% comp. And then just a 35% of the Wolf. The Wolf I found is like really like, it's like pushing through a bunch of like noisy tape and saturation and stuff. And sometimes it can hold the releases longer on stuff, which can be a cool effect. But if you're not looking for that, then you want to be really careful with this Wolf thing. So that's that. And then here's the drums, the room drums, mics, just stereo mics. Looks like I did a little bit of 1176 on here. Let's see, let's solo it out and just check it out. Yeah, so about 3 dB, you know, and I'm just like letting the attack through, releasing really quickly on that. And it's probably just like bringing up levels, gluing things, pushing the mics a little bit forward. And then here, it looks like I wanted to bring out that 42, you know, probably looking for a little bit more of the timbre of the hi-hats and stuff in the room. And then sweeping out kind of that stuff. And I'll bypass those things in and out for you real quick. So yeah, the compressor is making a lot of gain up, right? And then this is like one of the plugins that I just absolutely love for drums or putting anything in a room, really. Ocean Way Studios, and I'm just blending this with the reverb, and it looks like the C12 and Omni, and just kind of bringing it up a little bit. And then I typically have like a master EQ on the bottom and the top, but looks like just on the top on this one. And I'll just bypass all this in and out so you guys can hear it. But the last thing I'm doing here is looks like more compression. Who doesn't love compression, right? Especially on drums. So let's see what this sounded like with nothing on it. Yeah, so I think his room mics and his room was very dry, so I wanted to make it more of a live room. And that's basically what that's doing. And it's also kind of bringing those mids forward. So when you hear, like, for example, the kicks and the snares and then just the room mic, here's what that sounds like. So that's a really, really important element to the drum sound that I got. The room mics are really, like, to me, giving you the back of the kick. It's giving you like where the beater is and everything. And yeah, it just kind of gives dimension to the drums, gives you more depth. It doesn't feel like everything's just right there, right in front of you, and you know, just gives you a little vibe. And then the overheads. This is kind of the last kind of stuff besides these kicks. But overheads, we got 1176, probably doing the same thing, bringing up a bunch of level. And then it looks like I went pretty crazy with this, just getting rid of a bunch of stuff. And let's see why.
Get over it. Too down to go. You're up for games.
Yeah, so the overhead's like another huge, super important aspect to this track and bringing it to life. The overheads felt to me like tape saturated, and I wanted it to just kind of take the top and take the hi-hats, really is what those are doing, and giving you just that kind of, you know, just crunchy, kind of just feel good, warm, analog sounding stuff, right? And then live kick here, we have just an API 2500. I love it on drums. I find like if you take the attack really slow, you're going to get the attack, the initial punch of the drums. I typically, if I'm going to do this on a drum, I'm not doing much. Let's see how much compression I'm doing here. Okay, so not much, right? Like you're getting a dB or two of gain reduction, but let's solo that out and let you just hear that and what it's doing. So yeah, that's the live kick, which it sounds like I'm really trying to get the beater out of that, and a little bit of the head. So that with the kick sample together, I think that's always something I'm thinking about, is like the overall sound of the kit. So let's hear those together. Yeah, it's so subtle, right? Like the live kick is basically just giving me a little bit of that beater live kick sound, right? And it's holding out a little bit more, which, you know, kind of messes with the pocket. So I probably was like, nah, I need to use more of the kick sample. So that's pretty typical. I go by feel a lot of the times, you know, when I'm mixing. I don't try to get too technical with things. Like I'm not looking at this and going, I need to go 2.5 dB of gain reduction. You know, I'm not, that's not how I mix anymore. So yeah, kick, this is doing, you know, you could see how much I'm just getting rid of the beater stuff, because it was like pretty, you know, beater heavy. And especially when you start parallel processing, you know, parallel comp and stuff on kick drums, it typically brings that beater out and that 2K, you know, 1 to 5K kind of area. So I also swept the top off. So let's hear what this sounded like without these huge cuts and sweeps. So that one compressing a little bit harder and attacking, you know, the same 30. Ratios up a little higher as well. So that kick drum really was like, that's really the foundation for the disco beat, really, right? Let's hear that all together. I mean, come on, right? Like, and another reason why I took out the top, because it would just be competing with all that, you know, the cymbals and the hi-hats and stuff. So yeah, get rid of that stuff if you got it in your kick drum. Nobody wants that shit in a kick drum. Unless the kick drum is just like by itself and it's bare naked and like, you know, it can take over all that. But otherwise, I just got rid of it. Again, parallel processing, you know, and then let's look at the last thing here is the drum bus, right? Like you can see crazy amounts of processing on the drum bus, and that's just what I do, what I'm known for. You know what I'm saying? I just do what I gotta do to get that sound out of my head. And sometimes it's kind of dramatic, right? So Pro Q3, again, I'm just taking out some of this chunky. This is actually a really funny thing, like the 300 to 400 area. That's like what they took out of every disco record, you know? So if you really want that disco kind of woolly, big kick drum that's kind of, you know, shiny on top and then like big and kind of subby at the bottom, you take out a little bit of that 300 to 400 area. And I'll get rid of some of that, you know, so now it's like more of a disco kick. So yeah, and then trimming out the fat there, and then API 2500, probably gluing here more so. Let's see. Yeah, most you're going to get out of that is like 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction there. And the attack's a little bit faster. Looks like trying to get it to punch a little bit more. And then we got the Slate Digital tape machine. And I mean, I like this tape machine, especially for drums. I think it's probably like shines the most on drums for me. 30 IPS, so I'm keeping all the top end and everything up. And FG9, which is like, you know, a newer tape formula, basically like really nice mastering grade tape, and 1/2-inch 2-track. So let's kind of bypass this in and out, show you what it's doing. I mean, come on, it's doing what real tape does, right? Just saturating it, pushing a little bit forward, just sounding good. I love it. Such a great tape plugin. And then I got Sooth 2 in here. Looks like less mud on the master is what I'm using. 4 times high quality. Let's just see what we're doing here. I think I'm probably just taking out more of that area, right? Like, what do you got? 177 to 597. It's kind of where it's focused. Let's check that out.
My heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty, baby, where have you been?
Yeah, just tightening it up, man. Getting that low mid stuff all tightened up with the full kit in mind. Room mics, and everything on the drums. And then Pro Q3 looks like same thing. I'm kind of taming, I think, a little bit of the punch. It started getting really, really punchy in the 132, so just took it down a touch. Get rid of the fat there and gave it a little sparkle sheen on 10K. And then last but not least, just looks like some Goldfoss. Looks like I just kind of boosted smiley facey and tame and recovered. Mainly tame, probably for more separation. Probably just a little bit more sparkly. But let's check that out.
My heart, I gave it again. Dance floor is empty.
Yeah, so this plugin, what it's really great at and why I love to use it like towards the end of a chain is it's really great at taking something that's like really focused or really too mono and just kind of like spreading and widening. And the best way to put it is like it's deciphering the code. It's kind of getting rid of problems and clearing up things, right? Which makes it sound wider, but it also kind of tucks it into the mix a little bit better for me. So Goldfoss was just kind of a cool little last soft little butter serve on the top of the drum bus. So that's what that is. And then it looks like I had a send on 12, but it's not going anywhere, not doing anything. So that's it. Those are the drums. And these drums, believe it or not, took a long time because they were produced and, you know, I did all the programming and everything and found all the samples and I redid them over and over and over again until I found a groove I really liked. And then I got to the drummer. The drummer had to cut this, I think 3 or 4 times. You can see this is, it says take 5 on it, on the drums. So yeah, you know, like this part of making records, you have to make sure that you're getting exactly what you want from the players. It's a lot harder also when people are in different places because then you have to, you know, hey, I really like that, but, you know, getting on phone calls, getting on FaceTime, etc. It's just, it's kind of messy that way. I'd rather be at the studio and just be able to get what I wanted the first time and talk to him and, like, you know, get what we were looking for. But he nailed it, I think. By take 5, we have everything we needed and everything I wanted out of the drums. And they just added that vibe. I didn't use like all live drums because I feel like that would have dated the record a little bit more. And I was looking for kind of a modern cross-genre, classic, timeless kind of thing with this record. Really important to me. And that's why the horns found their way onto the record as well. But we'll get into that in another video module. And yeah, thanks for checking it out. And hopefully this was cool to see kind of the drums and the process behind it. And we'll get into all the other stuff in the next videos. So stay tuned.